It's kind of lit.
All right, I think we're live. It says we're live.
Good, we
Yeah.
are. It looks live.
Does it?
If
Does
that
it look
counts.
live? Indeed. Okay, and then let me check to make sure. Yes, we are live on YouTube as well. I see us on here.
Mhm.
Awesome. So people can comment there too. Okay, welcome. Good morning
Good morning.
to our brilliant Wakanda panel to talk about Black Panther. All right, so to start, I want to ask how many times did both of you see the movie?
I've seen it twice. I've seen
Okay.
it twice. The first time was a holistic experience that was beyond anything that I've seen recently. And then the second time, I was with some kids that I mentor. We took a bunch of kids to see the movie. And so, besides like trying to keep them in line for not getting too excited, that was just like trying to look for more of the nuance. But it was good. Two times is the answer.
Okay, cool. And Camelia?
Much like Timon, I've seen the film twice. And again, the first time was really very much a rounded experience. There was all sorts of things happening that opening day and the following. And so I got a very brief introduction to the movie. I felt like I didn't have, there was too many distractions. So I felt like I didn't have the time to dig in the way that I wanted to dig in. So I went again and I took my mom, which was a very dynamic experience. And so and then I had an opportunity to really sort of spend some time with the things that I wanted to dig a little bit into on that second go round. So took notes and everything. It was somewhat of an academic pursuit.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Okay. I also saw it twice. First time, saw it with family, and I made them all dress up for Wakanda so we could take pictures and everything to go. So they enjoyed that. And also, then the second time, also, it was more to dig deeper as well in terms of seeing it again after like binge watching all the interviews and behind the scene clips I could find on YouTube, particularly the one with Ryan Coogler breaking down the casino scene. I'm not sure if you guys have
Yeah,
seen
yeah, of course. Who
it,
hasn't watched that?
right? So that too, I was like, oh, I've seen it in so many different ways. Of like, wait, that's true. There is all these other things he put in there. What?
Right.
So that was.
Did you guys go back to back? Like, did you go like opening night and then the following night, or did you give it some time before you went back to see it?
I gave it some. I think it was a week. So the first weekend and then the weekend after, I saw it again. Yeah, so it was like a week.
Yeah, I gave it a week as well. My wife wanted to go back and see it again like the very next night. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like I'm not ready yet to see it again. Like, I need more time to like understand. And then the thing is like I didn't want to go back the next night and then watch it again with people who are like seeing it for the first time. I'm like, I needed to like I needed to be quiet in the theater when I go back next so I can just like sit and not be like hype. Like I need to be focused. Anyhow, but so I gave it some time as well.
Yeah, likewise. I went opening weekend, so I think we all had a very similar experience in terms of time. In terms of timing, I waited for my mom to come to Houston. I wanted to see it with her, and so yeah, the following weekend went back, same theater, same seat. I waited till I went in the middle of the day, so I knew that my seat would be available.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and took my mom for the second time. So yeah, it probably took a week just to kind of let obviously the reaction from the first time seeing it settle a little bit, right? I think that I was still exploring and chewing on stuff and having conversations with people who had seen it for the first time during that week. And so, like all of you mentioned, there was definitely some more perspective and a little bit deeper perspective when I went back the second time because I'd been able to take in all of this input from all these other mediums and then go and approach it again and really point out the things and see the things that people have kind of called out over that week preceding the second time. So yeah, it was a great experience both times.
Very good.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to start talking just about the film as a film and then bring it deeper. Okay? So to start, in terms of cinematography, wardrobe, characters, what resonated with you or stood out to you or what that made you be like, yes, finally, while you were watching it?
The imagery imagery of the film for me, you know, and I think people have explored this quite a bit. So none of this will be, you know, fresh or new in terms of the thinking here, but just in general, the imagery of the film was so exciting, so fresh, so new. Seeing the range of what Blackness can be and what that looks like and how that shows up in various parts of the world was really exciting for me. I really liked the juxtaposition of the imagery of, you know, Wakanda and coming into the film, we sort of had three pillars of visuals, right? You had Wakanda and all of its glory and its majesty and all these colors, and then you had Compton, right, which was kind of gray and dark, and there was so much shadow work. When we were in Compton, everything seemed to be kind of under a cloud of like gray shadow. So I noticed that very quickly as we walked into the film. And then you had the scene with Nakia in Nigeria, right? When she's with the girls in the caravan, and the imagery there being extremely dark, right? So taking it to an even deeper level of darkness and shadow in that scene as well. So I really liked the play of light and dark as we worked our way across the world, right? And where we were showing up in the world in the movie. So that was that stood out to me almost immediately. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I noticed, I don't even know if I said I noticed it, but in terms of wardrobe and general aesthetic was kind of the blending of like this futuristic technology aspect with, you know, the traditional that is Africa, right? And so I was in a conversation with a friend of mine and we were talking about like the actual city, like so when they go into the city and they're walking in the city, T'Challa, and someone was saying like, they should have done more with that, and I'm like, well, like they shouldn't have. I thought it was like the perfect mix of like the technological advancements and then like how you would see Africa today. And I thought that was really beautiful how they did that instead of making it look like South Korea, right? Because that's like, you know, us in North America, we see like, oh, like futuristic, da da da. You think of like Seoul and basically Tokyo. And then they were able to put both of those places essentially in like one, which was the street that they were walking. And I thought they did that really well.
That's a really good point. You know, now that I think about it, one of the things that my favorite scenes in the movie, and I think we saw it twice from beginning to end, was flying into Wakanda. And you're in this place where it's very pastoral, and you've got folks out, you know, in the green, and the grasslands, and the cattle, and all that. And then there's this veil that you enter into, and then here is Wakanda, right? And so I noticed that one, and I guess that was fairly obvious. But now that you mention it, when you're flying into Wakanda, and we had that aerial view, you're right. There was this mix of like slick steel. Very futuristic buildings, which still held elements of traditional buildings. So one of my favorite building in the whole thing was this skyscraper that had the thatched roof coming out of the side of it, right? So it's like, this is so 3000, but it's so like at home in the village, right? So
right.
That was amazing. But then when you get on the ground in Wakanda, right? So as they're walking through the streets of Wakanda, for me, at least, the feeling was very much traditional, right? There were the vendors on the street, the crowds. It felt like it was hot, you know, the way that it feels when you're walking in the streets of like the metropolises of various parts of Africa. So I almost lost, now that I think about it, I almost lost that futuristic, outside of the wardrobe, I almost lost that futuristic element once we were on the ground in Wakanda. And that very well may have been intentional by the director. But either way, it created so many layers of just things to see and look at that it fascinated me. So that's a really good point.
I also love the way Wakanda was built in terms of it. I think it showed how an African country can be developed without looking like the West in terms of its architecture and from the skyscraper, Stephen Shuri's laboratory, everything has African motifs or jumbo African masks or the colors or the triangles and everything, which I thought was so, in different parts of Africa, you do have African motifs in like the African Art Center or in people's homes, but then the so-called bigger buildings and stuff still end up looking like Western type of design. So I thought that I was hoping that, well, then maybe that might inspire us to start trying to build. I'm not sure the cost and stuff about that, but building our buildings where you can see that everywhere is African pride all over the place type of thing, even with that mega technology that like beats Avatar in my mind in terms of in there. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you know, it's fair, right? Because it's, again, like you just peel back the layers of this thing, and when you think about the perspective that everyone came to the film with, was like, we are creating a world here that was never touched by the outside. Like, of course, that's what the architecture will look like, right? Of course, that's what the design and the layout of the city will look like if we were never influenced by Western architecture. If that was not the standard to build to and to be like, then we would create our own. And I think there may be a few examples. I can, you know, probably think of one or two on the continent today that I've seen, where it's evident that whoever designed that building took great care to ensure that it did represent like the circular themes, interconnected circles, sort of like you'd see in a typical traditional village setup. So I've seen a few things like that, but you're right. In most of the major cities, you still have this very square, very gray, very typical architecture style. So that's just yet another layer, right? Of the care that they went to ensure that everything reflected this idea that all of this was developed in-house, right? All the ideas, the concepts, all of it. So yeah.
And then also how it seemed as developed as Wakanda was, it didn't have to sacrifice the environment or nature to be like that. In terms of the jungle is still completely lush. It seems like they don't have deforestation problems, or their water possibly is not contaminated, but they're still super more developed than the rest of the world. I'm not sure if that was like a nuance they were like intentionally doing, but I thought it was kind of cool that, well, actually, you don't have to kill the planet to be developed and advanced either kind of thing. You actually still totally respect it as well.
Yeah.
All right. So next, the soundtrack for the film. I'm not sure. Have you guys heard both? There's like one soundtrack with the film score, and then the other soundtrack is produced by Kendrick Lamar.
I've heard the one. Well, I mean, I've definitely heard the one produced by Kendrick.
Yes.
And then I've heard bits and pieces played of the like actual movie score. So familiar with.
So what did you guys think of either one or both? Well, I mean, the film score, we heard it because it's in the movie, technically, right? But yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in on this one. So Kendrick to me is, I mean, in my eyes, for sure, kind of like the best rapper that exists at this exact moment. Is just my personal opinion. And I thought he was brilliant in how he produced that album for the movie. The only thing that I thought it was missing, I think it represented Wakanda from a North American perspective. And I think that was like a stylistic choice because Coogler is also from the Bay. And then Kendrick's from LA or whatever. So that's clearly the direction that they went. So, had it been maybe an African director or something like that, maybe you would hear more Afrobeat style music somewhere in that. I was surprised they didn't put like at least one track on the album that kind of felt a little bit more like that. But outside of that, I think it was phenomenal. And going back after seeing the movie and then going back to it to listen to like a lot of Kendrick's lyrics, like he references Killmonger a lot. And it's not surprising that he references Killmonger so much because like he too is like an African American from the West Coast. So like they totally live the same existence in a way. But I thought it was interesting how he spoke about Killmonger in that track or in the majority of that album.
Yeah. I have to admit, I listened to the Kendrick produced soundtrack prior to seeing the and I did not understand it. And honestly, I was quite, and I too, like Timon, am a K-Dot fan. I've collected all of his music. I've been following him since the start of his career, and I was highly disappointed. I literally had like an emotional reaction when I heard the soundtrack the first time, and I sat here like, what is he doing? What is he thinking? I do not get it. I was very sad, and I listened to it 2 or 3 times. I called some friends, like, yeah, what is he thinking about? And like, maybe is my gauge off here? What's happening? And then I went to see the film, right? And you're spot on. And you know that once I saw it the first time and came back and listened to the soundtrack again, got it. It made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
It's still not my favorite Kendrick Lamar effort, I have to admit, but I think that two things stood out. Yes, it was very much West Coast influence, obviously.
Yeah, it's Killmonger's album, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's Killmonger's album, and that was my next point. That the second thing was that it certainly had a perspective, right? And we could see what that perspective is. He made that abundantly clear. I don't know if that was intentional, but I did want more with the amount of really quality, like great music coming out of the continent that's very much relatable to like our generation. I wanted to hear more of that. I wanted this to be an opportunity to maybe even partner for someone with the reach and the span of Kendrick Lamar to partner with some of these up and coming, African artists to kind of get them on the tracks, or even African, partner with African producers. I thought that it was a missed opportunity perhaps to kind of expand the whole theme of the connection between the two places. Like everything on that album was Compton. And with the exception of All the Stars, right, which was obviously everybody's top track or whatever. But yeah, and I did like the film score as well. Very understated. There were one or two, I think there was like one Afrobeat artist that was featured in the film when we were entering into, and I love that it happened when we met Chala's sister, because I felt like that was her energy. And that's when the song came, and like we walking into her lab and kind of seeing the technology, and it really fit. So I have to say that of all of the things in the film, I think that the effort behind the soundtrack is it's still amazing. It's still a great soundtrack. I'm still going to listen to it. I was listening to it this morning getting ready, but I think of everything, it was probably, on the totem pole of excitement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I think to jump back in, I think I watched something that said they produced the majority of the music in South Africa. So it was I forget whoever was the producer. When Coogler called the guy to be like, "Yo, I need you to produce this thing." They were on the next flight out to South Africa, and I think they were there for 4 months or something like that, putting this thing together. And so there is one part, and I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to take the speakers. So it's the end of this song. So that was that at the very end there of that song. So that's actually a Senghalese tribe. And so apparently they sample a lot of those types of sounds and then put them in the music. So it's they would record, obviously in South Africa, wherever they were, they would bring these tribes in and do I guess have them do their tribal chants or whatever the case is, and then they infuse those into the majority of the songs. But the thing is, we can't hear it; just sounds like it's synthesizer most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So there are those smaller elements, but I just they just kind of spruce them in as garnish, you know what I mean? Like a little dressing, So they probably could have done that a little bit better. But I thought it was lit though. Still, I mean, that shit was hitting. So whatever.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree with both of you. I got the album a week before when it came out and listened to it before watching the film, and I too was like, wait, what? Where's P Square? Or where's we could have sampled Fella. Like, where is like the other stuff
True,
kind of thing?
true, true.
And especially since looking at how the wardrobe, the costume designer really did her work and research to try and really showcase all the vastness of tribes and cultures in Africa. So I was expecting that the album too would really try to have what might have some reggae, Afrobeat, high life, like just showcase all of that in it. And for some of it, if you're just like listening to it in the background, it kind of sounds like, oh yeah, a hip hop album from 2018. Like, and then randomly Black Panther. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, you know, kind of thing. So I do agree with that. But yeah, I do agree also that with the lyrics, you do get a sense of, I was also feeling like more of like Black Panther Party version 2.0 feels with what it was talking about in the songs, which I was like, I wouldn't hear a Wakandan saying this though, because that's not their experience. So where is this coming from? So I definitely, that is a good point of like, no, this is like Killmonger's album, totally, because it did sound more of like from his perspective, complete. So yeah, I agree with that. And then with the score, there's some of the score reminds me of like The Lion King almost. Maybe it makes sense that they did it in South Africa as well, in terms of their orchestra arrangements and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're renaming the album, right? It's now
Yes.
Yeah.
It's official. Okay.
Officially.
100%. Absolutely. Without a doubt.
All right. So now going deeper, I want to talk about Black excellence and Black identity. So what, throughout the film, I saw there was a lot of illustrations of Black excellence, but also showcasing how complex Black identity is, from those from Africa to those from America and those in between who also kind of straddle both worlds as well. What resonated with you about that?
You know, in terms of like identifying with particular people in the film and their kind of brand of Black excellence and Black identity, for me, and I think that's when I saw it the first time, it was such a powerful experience because I literally identified with every single character in the movie. And so, kind of as an aside, I read this one article and it classified Killmonger as the villain in the movie, and I'm like, what? Did we even see the same film? Like, how could you even say that? It was literally just like two competing identities that are equally valid. And I'm like, how? So just because he lost the fight at the end or whatever, like you're claiming him to be the villain or whatever the case is, like you completely miss the point if that's how you see it. Mm-hmm. And so to me, even Killmonger was a version of Black excellence that I think I need in myself, the same way T'Challa, and the same way T'Challa's father told him to stand up because he's a king, right? And I think all of these things were like so valid, and I think they live inside of like every single person. To me, that really resonated with me. Hopefully, the one thing that stuck with my wife and even myself was how, and when I look back at it more, I started to agree more. It was like the Black women in that movie were like, they were the movie, like they were like the entire movie. And it was the one thing that was so impressive to me and so beautiful was T'Challa as the rightful king and kind of the guy with the in terms of the movie, whatever that that perspective won, or it was seen as right or whatever. That all of the people that protected him was women. I just like, man, that was like everything. That like completely blew me away. And so that alone, as a form of Black excellence, I think was so important to see.
So that what you have just laid out is the part of the film where my head explodes. Like it is the place I get, and I think, okay, so I'll back up and then we'll get back here because it's I've spent so much time picking apart the the presence of Black women in the film on all the sides, right? I literally kind of sat through and said, like, who are the Black women? Like, let's list all of the Black women in the film. And for the most part, in Wakanda, the women we see there are typical archetypes, right? You got the mom, the sister, the lover, right, partner. You've got and then you've got Okoye. Whoa, like where do we see that, right? And so I think that everyone, the women and men, their Black excellence shows up as an output of whatever their experience was. And I agree. I think that a lot of people oversimplified this thing and made it about good versus bad, T'Challa and Killmonger, when I doubt there's no way that you could have had that interpretation if you were looking, like you said, at the same film. We really want to talk about who the villain was. It was Claw, right? Like that's who had absolutely the worst intentions for Wakanda and Wakandans, right, in the film. But somehow, because Killmonger is who he's fighting, I feel like Killmonger and T'Challa are almost two sides of the same coin. They want the exact same things for Wakanda, and the way they go about that is just different, right? Their perspective on how we get there is shaped by their own personal experience. And so just like you said, I think that Killmonger, I posted something like, I'm Killmonger, right? Like Killmonger was right.
Yeah, of course.
But, of course, that is, me as, an American born, individual who has like my entire life and shaped, my experience shaped by being in this country, right? And knowing what it is to be a part of a society where you are not the king. and it's almost like you'll probably never be the king. So yes, this whole topic of Black excellence, you could just pick apart all these little nuances. For me, yes, the way women showed up and the fact that none of these men, Killmonger or T'Challa, would have gotten to where they were or sustained their position without the sacrifices of Black women, which is so, again, it's this concept that you don't see a whole lot in Hollywood. You look across the board, it's always like the hero is the guy and he's doing it all on his own. And he's, the epic soldier out there fighting the battles and he's got a damsel at home. There were no damsels in this movie. Right? Like there was no.
Maybe there was Killmonger's girlfriend when he shot her. He was like, sorry. He was like, just dummied her. I'm like, bruh, it's your girl.
Yeah. He was the closest that we got, right? Well, other than the kidnapped girls, right? But they weren't key characters. But I thought about Killmonger's girlfriend, and I spent a lot of time thinking about her. And in all honesty, she wasn't a damsel. She helped coordinate the heist.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like she was completely embedded in all of the strategy that went behind creating the heist in the first place, right? She helped facilitate all that. And then even in the subsequent scenes where we see her, where, they're trying to come get Claw, she's an active participant. Like she's coming out of that van with like guns ablaze. One thing that I did, it was kind of like a knife to the heart, was when Killmonger killed her. When he made her the sacrifice. And because this is my first time seeing the film. And at this point, I'm definitely saying, all right, Killmonger is Black Americans or Black people in the Americas with our experience. And T'Challa, it was very much like that, very black and white. I think we all probably went through that phase at some point. So when I saw that, it's like, oh, so the Black man in America will easily sacrifice his partner, the Black woman, right, and kind of put her on the chopping block to get to the goal, and you don't see that in Wakanda, right? As a Black American woman, there was like this heartbreak.
Ooh, wow, never thought of that.
Partnered with you, right? Like she was in the dirt with you. She helped you become this, and just like that, you didn't see a moment of him thinking about that, right? It was just like, as soon as he saw the opportunity, okay, no problem, I'll kill her too, if it means getting to where I need to be. So that was, again, don't know if that was intentional, but it was certainly the sort of visceral reaction that I had when I saw it. Like, I got it. Right.
Wow.
But yeah, so again, but I won't classify her as a damsel. I can't bring myself to do it because she's me, right? In a way, you know what I mean? She's all of the women who sacrificed themselves with the actual Black Panther Party, who were actually there on the ground here in the U.S. Fighting alongside the struggle. So yeah, it's so much. It's so much. I think so that aside, what stood out the most to me, and that's not even what stood out the most to me. What stood out the most to me about Black excellence was the way. So I saw the technology, vibranium, right? This resource, this natural resource, as I think it's many of us did, as being a representative of all of the natural resources of the continent, right? And kind of tapping into that. And a very big part of that was their attachment to their spirituality, right? So for me, like I really got like, okay, vibranium is their spirituality, their ability to access the world of the ancestors, right? Their ability to know how to foster and nurture and grow this environment with the heart-shaped herb, right? And to take that and not abuse it and use it to, like, just like you said, to help further their societies as opposed to using it for detrimental purposes like everyone else would have wanted to do. And that for me was the ultimate expression of Black excellence, right? Because having access, unabated access to a resource like that and being as responsible as they've been for generations with it, for me, it's like what could be a higher display, a bigger display of Black excellence. So that was probably what stood out the most to me in terms of how people are. Yeah.
I have an so the good thing about going first is that I hear you speaking, and I think about other things, and then I can like come back. Right. So like that's literally the best part. But so you asked the question, what was something that could be like an even a larger piece of Black excellence? And I think I have an answer to that. You might not agree, but either way, I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay. This was, I think, a pivotal point in superhero movies as well. And so the version of Black excellence, the number one you don't typically see, but then number two you definitely never see in superheroes movies, is a superhero with a family. Superman, never. Spider-Man, never. Batman, never. Thor, never. Iron Man, never. They all like lost their parents as children, or they like somehow are excommunicated with their family. And so to see him like literally as a superhero who like stands with his family behind him, that's never been seen before in like any superhero ever. And so then when I saw that, somebody else actually mentioned that to me, and I like lost my mind, right? It's crazy. But then the fact that his family was so strong, and like he leaned on his family, on his father who came before him, instead of like these people that I don't know, right? So it almost even made him stronger. I just thought that was like, I just couldn't even, I couldn't even process that. It was just too much for me. It really was. But yeah. So there's my answer. I gave it a shot.
I like that. No, I agree with both of your answers. And I think also to add the community aspect of Wakanda and at least the illustration of not lack of community, but maybe broken community outside of Wakanda, I thought also lends itself to what Black excellence can be or should be. In terms of, you see with Killmonger's story, he accomplished a lot in terms of you get out of Oakland without a father and you go to MIT, go to CIA and do all of this stuff for this one purpose of, okay, you're trying to, help your people, but you still are kind of alone though. Because even when you go back to your ancestral plane, it's the same semi-dark apartment with just your dad, who really can't necessarily help you completely because he also feels lost in what happened to him. While with Wakandans in general, everything, it seemed like the Wakanda mindset or whatever, Wakanda's not necessarily the place, it's the community or the people. That's what we're fighting for, that's what we're saving, that's what we're protecting, kind of thing, which I thought that family and community is very important, or should be even more important in the Black community. And I feel that enhances Black excellence as well.
I mean, you think about the saying, look, we stand on the shoulders of our fathers. Wakanda became very excellent because they were never taken from their fathers. Killmonger didn't have that as an option. Right? He knew his father very briefly, and he certainly didn't know his father's father, right? So that you're right. So I think that the balance that they created in Wakanda, not only generationally but also intertribally, you see this very delicate but very well maintained balance between all of the 5 tribes of Wakanda. Right? They're all there and fighting for the best interest of Wakanda as a whole, as opposed to being a tribalist, right? And being able to maintain their cultures, right? I loved that when you get to the challenge scenes, you still see clearly 5 distinct cultures, right? Well, what, 4, and then the Jabari comes in and you see them too, right, towards the end. But there was I never saw a moment of an attempt at domination over the other, right? Which was kind of the foundation of colonialism. Well, it was very much a pathway created to what would become colonialism was, tribalism. So they didn't have that there, right? And they worked really hard apparently to maintain that balance and to respect one another's culture without impeding upon each other. And so not having a framework like that here in America, it becomes very difficult for someone like Killmonger to even imagine that. One of the things that, I wrote something a couple weeks ago, was that I noticed was when the challenge scene, we had the first challenge scene, right? And Jabari, M'Baku comes and fights him. And towards the end, this ritual combat, when there is an opportunity to literally destroy your opponent, right? No one ever destroys their opponent. Even with the history that they had, right? There's always this, I think it was like an expectation that there will be a moment to show mercy, right? That I've clearly defeated you, going back to your corner now. I respect you. I'm not going to take your life. Killmonger comes in and there's absolutely no mercy, right? Like he has never known that framework. Everything that he's been taught is, death and violence and, you take your opponent out. He's a completely militarized man. And he saw his father literally slaughtered, right? So that idea of having mercy for your opponents, people, obviously ragged on him for that. Like, why would you kill him? You should have just, no, how could he have? That's not who he is. That's not anything that he's ever known. He came to win. And in his world, winning means destroying your opponent completely. And so he did what he was supposed to do. He did what he was trained to do, right? And I don't think that makes him any less of a noble character. I think that it shows that he's committed to what he set out to do, right? Within the framework of what he needs to do. And then you get this moment where, obviously, I sympathize with Killmonger, where T'Challa's sister, is crying after that challenge scene, and she says, "Oh, we didn't even get to bury him." I wrote that down when she said it, and I thought, well, Killmonger didn't get to bury his dad either. So why is the expectation different here suddenly? than for him, this person who literally is like your family, right?
Mm.
Just it's a great movie, guys. So much good here, so much good. But yeah, but again, that ability to respect each other, to maintain balance between the tribes was definitely for me an expression of like the highest Black excellence, right?
That's beautiful.
One more way to show it.
Hmm.
All right, so I feel we gotta dig a little deeper with T'Challa versus Killmonger, or T'Challa and Killmonger. Talking about the connections and gaps between Africans and the African diaspora, as well as the notion that, at least from some things that I've read, where T'Challa and Killmonger represent, like, I guess, the capitalist version of Dr. King versus Malcolm X, or the X-Men, Professor X versus Magneto storyline. What do you guys think of that?
I can go second on this one.
So I've heard. Okay, I'll jump in here. I've heard the comparison, the Dr. King Malcolm X comparisons, and one of the things that and at first I got it. It made sense. I definitely see the parallels between Killmonger and Malcolm. However, I don't necessarily agree with the idea that the politics of T'Challa align with the politics of Dr. King. And I say that for one reason. T'Challa and Wakandans in general, for the history of their country, were separatists completely. So if anything, I would say maybe Marcus Garvey. Mm. It's, we will maintain our own place in the world. We will develop our own systems of economy. We will develop our own technology. We will do that independently of all of the rest of you, right? I feel like that was the position of T'Challa. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And Dr. King, obviously, being much more of an integrationist, saying, we want to, integrate into society and be given an equal playing field and an equal share at fighting for whatever it is that we think is, life, liberty, happiness, all those things that we pursue. I didn't see that at all in Wakanda, right? They weren't trying to go anywhere. They had everything they needed. And so the politic, again, not saying that one is better than the other, just that they're shaped in very, very different societies. But yeah, I mean, the themes of Africans and continental Africans and the perspective there versus, right, I hate using that term, but as opposed to or in comparison to Africans in the rest of the diaspora, obviously a very clear theme, right? And I think that the film did a decent job, maybe not completely comprehensive, but why would we expect that from like a comic book movie? But did a decent job of exploring that and kind of introducing things that are quite common when we get into conversations about diasporatic culture and belief.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think I have too much to add to that question. I think I think it was done very well, given the constraints of a almost 2-hour movie, to represent people, like you said, far and in American in between, right? So as someone, both my parents are from the Caribbean. I was raised in Canada, but still very felt like this movie was like for me, right? An interesting conversation I had, a friend of mine, who when his family went to see it in London, they were like, yeah, it was okay, right? And I thought that was interesting that they're like, for us here in North America, where it's the biggest deal, but in a completely different country. So there are Nigerians living in London. I think the duality or the juxtaposition between the two wasn't as obvious maybe for them. And so for them, I think it was a completely different movie. Because for us here, we have this like visceral reaction to like, we know what Oakland is. We know what, the LA riots where we know what like that whole entire environment was. And so for people who are, in another, first world country on the other side of on the other side of the pond, it was like, yeah, I guess that happens in America. It's probably a shitty place, but whatever. Um, but so I think there's I don't know if it was ever going to connect with every single person to be able to see it in that way. I'm sure that they identified with who T'Challa was and why it was so important, but maybe not so much with the identity of Killmonger. One thing that I do want to bring up briefly, and don't shoot me for it, I read this one article and it equated, you guys are going to hate this, T'Challa to Donald Trump, believe it or not. So I read this article. It was actually on The Root, and they were commenting on a Breitbart article. And the Breitbart article was like, yeah, this movie finally understands us as Americans, and T'Challa is Trump. Like he totally, they're the same person. In that T'Challa was like, well, we have all these resources, and like, do we really want to share them? Let's like take care of us first here at home, and then maybe if we have a little extra at the end of the day, we'll like spruce a little here and there. So anyhow, so there's this whole entire argument or article about that. I thought that was super interesting. But just T'Challa being associated with the president of the United States is a little wonky right now. But so I thought that was really interesting. But in totality, I thought they did a very good job. At least for me, from someone who was raised in North America, it was easily understandable for me.
Funny enough, I get that argument. I hadn't heard it yet, and I hadn't seen that article, but I will go out to The Root and check it out because I see all the parallels they draw. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I kind of thought about as I watched the film, I think maybe the second time, was the idea of that idea, right? So that concept that we're going to compare T'Challa to Trump, right, is probably just like the next wheel on the next spoke on a wheel that I already started thinking about, which was nationalism and ethnicity and the way we treat those things, right? Whereas, culturally speaking, African Americans, Black people of the diaspora in North America have had a somewhat tumultuous history with nationalism, with the idea of completely embracing ourselves as Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's always been, for as long as our parents and their parents, as long as they've been in this part of the world, these conversations about who we are and trying to identify and very much disassociating ourselves from the idea that we are fully American. So, mm-hmm. And, having, interacting with people from different places in the world, Black people from different places in the world, throughout Latin and South America, throughout Europe and Africa, that doesn't seem to be as big of, an intellectual hurdle for most other people. I think that might be somewhat uniquely American in a way, because I find that Black people in other places in the world tend to be quite nationalist, and they tend to be quite embedded in the idea that they are Cuban first, for instance, right? And also happen to be Black, right? Mm-hmm. Ghanaian first, and to be Black people, right? And so that very much was what T'Challa felt. I think that's what he expressed in the way that he behaved. Like, we are Wakandans first, then we're Black people, and I think that it was no better. Like, the biggest demonstration of that for me was the scene, one of the opening scenes when Nakia went to Nigeria to save try to save the royalty of them. In my mind, like, not only is Wakanda not interested in using its technology, its resources, to help Black people in Compton, but they're not even using that technology and those resources, on a whole scale basis, where you got a spy going into Nigeria to help their neighbors on the continent of Africa, right? So how does a nation like Wakanda exist in this bubble of protection when literally, like, your neighbor, like, these people are like 2-3 countries over, are suffering at such peril at the hands of their own people. So so I get it. I don't want to say that I'm going to co-sign on the Donald Trump. I absolutely understand the perspective, from which someone would develop that idea, right? That like, yeah, he was about Wakanda, like that.
Yeah. And so just to very briefly piggyback on one thing that you said. I moved to the US like about 5 years ago. And so in Canada, so I was 25 when I left Canada. I'm 30 now. And so when I came here, I didn't know that you could be a Black American. I had never heard of that before. I didn't know that existed. And so in Canada, no matter what, if you see like a Black person, another Black person, what doesn't matter. If you ask them like, yo, where are you from? You will get an answer that is not Canada. Right. And so it wasn't until like 3 years ago, maybe like 4, when I asked them like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, America. I'm like, no, the thing, like,
you know what I mean? Like,
and so, yeah. And because like I'd spent 25 years of my life, anytime I would meet anybody who looked like me, they would be able to like literally identify the exact country that their people came from. And so it is just so interesting to be here. And like people can't do that. And the thing is, it's unfortunate. It's if you're here and you cannot, it's not your fault. Right. And so that's another important thing to remember. But it was just very mind blowing to me that could even exist. Because I just didn't understand it, because I had never seen that in 25 years of life. So yeah, I didn't get it.
But no, that definitely connects with what she was saying in terms of Blacks in other countries. Yeah, they can say that, oh no, I'm from Brazil, but yes, I'm Afro-Latina, or right. But here it is difficult to be like, well, yes, I'm American, but this is for the Black American experience, saying that you're American is not like this was a loving father that's saying you're American, right?
Right.
There's so much struggle and hate in that saying, no, I'm African American, or no, I'm Black American, or no, I'm just this, that I'm formerly known as Black American, like whatever. But
the artist formerly known as Negro, right? Whatever, right?
Yes. So I think that makes it, even though I know that people in the Black diaspora have also had different struggles that historically or even now, but I think the nationalistic view in America is difficult, I guess, just the way America was founded, that it's every time we always remind you like, no, actually only Pocahontas can say that. The rest of you, no, actually, no. So I think that does come into play, that's for some people that is not shameful, but it's hurtful as well. Or even for those who can't say exactly where their family came from, sort of thing. So I do definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So next, I want to talk about gender equality in the film regarding love and power.
Well,
both of y'all smiled at the same time.
Okoye is my girl. Like I'm fascinated with her. I love her. I think that she was dynamic. I loved her. And I know that there were scenes, based on some interviews I saw after the movie, with her in it that kind of explored who she was and her background a little bit more, like before she was Dora Milaje, and what made her become the character that she was. But there was such a strength that I think many Black women demonstrate day to day, right? And her willingness to. One of the things that I was talking to a friend of mine who is from Compton, actually, like the day after the movie, we went to go see the movie at the same time. She lives in DC. So we went to go see the movie same day, and then when I got home that night, we got on the phone. And what I recall saying was there was one thing that happened in the movie that I don't think I've ever seen in another film, comic film or not. And it was the point at which Okoye was faced with making a decision between her country and like her love, right? And that in the final big fight scene. And gosh, I can't remember his name in the movie, but Daniel Kaluuya in the film. it's like you would kill me, my beloved, right? And it's like, here's another one of these moments where she very much could have been a damsel. Mm-hmm. And instead, again, like almost without thinking, it's like, for Wakanda, in a heartbeat. Like, it's not even a thought. Like, you thought, right? You know what I mean? Like, you tried it. Like, it's not going down, bro. And like, I think I screamed. I think I literally screamed at that moment in the film, and everyone around me was angry because they're not deal with this. It was a beautiful moment. And not saying that like you shouldn't celebrate love, but the idea that was something that I can't recall ever seeing anywhere else, where a woman, you know, we're always painted as like these very soft and delicate and emotionally driven creatures, right? That of course she's going to choose love. We sacrifice everything for love. That's always what Hollywood tells us, right? Like, just throw it all away so you can be with the one you love. And she's like, no, not today, right? Like, that was so yeah, I think that, again, one of those things that you would probably see portrayed more so by a male character, a male figure. Now you have this very strong Black woman, you know, displaying this characteristic of strength that is obvious, you know, that they wanted to explore the idea that, like, no, women can be strong too, and like, no, they can make the hard decisions too, and you know, in this world, right, in our perfect world, women can do that as well. So that was definitely probably my favorite. That and the scene with her and the rhinoceros were probably my favorite scenes in the whole movie. And then one other point about equality, as much as we explore gender equality in the film, the one moment where you definitely see kind of a return, and maybe even like a questioning by the director or the writer about, like, is it truly equality, is the moment it's after T'Challa dies, right? And they're headed up to the Jabari tribe, and they have the last of like the heart-shaped herb. And I want to say that T'Challa's mom, yeah, like, Nakia, you should just take the herb. You take it, right? And her response was, I'm a spy. I don't have an army. I'm not a king, right? As capable as she was. And I think that, honestly, when you look across the positioning of all of the characters in the film, I think that Nakia's approach was, T'Challa ended up where Nakia started in terms of his ideas about the reach of Wakanda, right? Like, he ended up in that midpoint after all of the drama with Killmonger. He ended up at that compromise that between complete radicalism and, you know, complete isolation and nationalism. He ended up where Nakia started. So honestly, I think with her skill set, her ideas, her beliefs, like, why not? Yeah, you absolutely should take the flower-shaped herb. But as a woman, she'd never been, and she knew that she would never be enabled to go out and to fight the battles that would be necessary to save the nation and to save that perspective and to save her people. So as much as we talk about gender equality, there were moments in there where it was like, yeah, but you're still not there. So, you know, there's still a ways to go. To really get to true equality. Right? But
yeah, I think I definitely hear what you're saying. I think that's especially about that last scene, but I think it wasn't her movie. So that's kind of, I mean, so
Black Panther, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I mean, it couldn't have been her at the very end. But I mean, if she gets a spinoff, I'm there for it. I'm with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I thought the women were incredibly powerful in the movie, as I kind of mentioned previously. Physically powerful, which you don't often see. I think the first time, you know, you saw that on a big scale was like 2 years ago from Wonder Woman. The physical power, they had emotional power in terms of, I mean, the one thing that like stuck out to me was it wasn't typically, you know, usually it's you know, a woman sees a man or whatever, when T'Challa dropped out of the out of the little whatever thing they have in the sky, and then he landed to fight for Lupita, and did he freeze? Whoa, shit! Of course he froze. You know what I'm saying? And all the women had a good laugh at that, because it's still like they had that power even over the king, right? And so typically when you think of like a king, and most of it's plenty of women, and you're choosing, and they're, you get rid of them here. I guess that's how Europeans did it or whatever. But he only had one woman that could make him freeze, and everybody knew it. And I thought that was brilliant. Outside of that, I think the women, truthfully, were so powerful in that movie. I think Okoye could have her own movie.
Absolutely.
The one thing that there was one moment in the movie that my wife wasn't the biggest fan of, and then I think we kind of like talked about it to me. So it was that same scene when they're walking to the Jabari tribe, and then Angela Bassett is like, should we really go? So exactly right before, and then Lupita says, no, like I need to get the heart shaper to the Jabari tribe, or to M'Baku. My wife was like, why would she even ask that? Like, why would Angela Bassett all of a sudden be like, oh my God, is this, are we doing this? Is the right thing? Should we turn around? Like, what? Like, we got something to do here. You know what I mean? And I think Lupita's character was very much like, she's like A, B, C, D, E, like that. She's very, like, chronological in her thinking. And I think, to me, she just kind of brushed it off like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And she was disappointed that Angela Bassett would have been like, all kind of like soft about like, is this the right thing? I don't know. Like, yeah, we know we got to do shit. Like, this is a big deal. And so, but outside of that, to kind of briefly answer the question, I thought they did a really good job. The one thing that, people so outside of kind of the general quality things, and folks, we talked about, so the CIA agent, what was his name? I forget what his name was. Anyhow, what was that?
Colonizer.
Yeah.
Yes, Colonizer. So he took a bullet for Lupita's character, right? And so, that might be, kind of that traditional save a woman thing, in distress thing or whatever. But it was also, as I saw, she was more important than he was. You know what I mean? Like, bruh, she's more important than you are. So whether you knew it or not, you did what you did, because in the grand scheme of how this thing was going to work, she was more important. So that's just something I took away as well.
And to follow up on that, yes, he did. And, right, I have a whole challenge with the idea that we positioned the CIA, just for the record, that we positioned the CIA as an ally in this movie, when in fact we know the history of the CIA and the Black Panther Party. And I know this is not about the Black Panther Party, but we all know that the parallels have been drawn from long before the creation of this film. But anyway, like, I know we're not talking about that right now. So
that's part two of this discussion.
I do think, that was, noble of him. And you're right. We needed her more than we needed him. Right. So he saved her. But then turn around and he is saved by T'Challa's sister. So even in that sacrifice that he made, he was ultimately saved by another Black woman. And that happened to me. I thought about the Alabama election of 2017, right? When it's like, and yet again, Black women are here to save us, right? It's like, and yet again, here is another teenager, by the way, which is just amazing. Who comes in and who saves this guy who, he wasn't as crucial to the mission. And obviously we didn't need him as much as we needed Nakia. But ultimately, even though I don't like it, he was, quintessential. He was necessary in the, towards the end of the movie, and like kind of stopping the tide of, this radical combat that Killmonger put into play. So, whatever, right?
Because even in her rescuing, it was, in everything they did, it was like, we're very confident that, we got this. Remember, like, Shuri was like, oh, great, another white man to save. Okay, bring him in. All right. And then just put this in, like, yes, he'll live. Okay. And then let me get back to my other inventions, because I don't know why you guys are interrupting me right now. with this,
Right, right.
you know, kind of thing. Like it wasn't even a like, oh my gosh, no, we have to save the white man. You know, it was kind of like if you brought him in. Exactly. That too. I was like, that is so, that is just how powerful they were, just as a so prideful in themselves kind of thing of like, no, yeah, of course we got this. Like, obviously. And then in terms of between T'Challa and Nakia, I liked how there was more meaning in their relationship in terms of, at least it evolved in terms of like T'Challa wanted Nakia to stay in Wakanda, and she kept on insisting that like, no, all of this outside, we need to help, and that's where my calling is. And usually it'll be a deal of like, okay, she'll give up her calling for love because, you know, she also does still love him. She's just kind of wanting to push him away a little bit. But then he evolves to like, oh, okay, she saved his life, right? Without asking anything in return. And then but then he also in return gives her an opportunity to like, you know what, you can still pursue your calling without putting yourself in danger all by yourself to go save our girls by yourself kind of thing, but still be here for our partnership. Where they came to a meeting of, I guess, equal expectations or priorities where neither of them had to give up on what they wanted for the other. And then, but in that also, it's like both of them separately are responsible for what they were given. Like she saved his life, but now it's on to you to do something with your life. Like now you need to come and fix what you didn't fix. And then in return, even though he created the outreach program for her to start, it's like, well, now it's on to you to make something out of what I'm giving you. And I thought that was, not sure if I've seen that illustration of a love relationship or even in Black love in that way. But that really stood out to me with them.
It definitely bucks the trend of, you know, common popular lore that relationships have to be one-sided. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly when you take the conversation to an even more narrow perspective and you're talking specifically about Black people, this idea that there are expectations of one partner to empower the other, right? That there is this neediness, you know, dependency upon one partner, and then like the weaker and the stronger of the partners, when in fact the best partnerships are the ones in which they empower each other to be their best selves, and that sometimes, you know, can be somewhat divergent in terms of their approach, which I think was true, you know, with these two, but it was very refreshing to see that, right? That you have, in many ways, two equally powerful people who have partnered to help each other become even more powerful and even more great. So.
I agree.
All right, so to wrap up, wanted to ask, what do you think about implementing the Wakanda mindset to our reality? In terms of not necessarily seeing Wakanda as that's a place that we all go on that Delta flight that we saw on social media to go to Wakanda, right? It's not so much that all Black people should just take that flight and live happily ever after in Wakanda, but in terms of how Wakandans, now that they are evolved, thanks to Killmonger and Nakia, trying to show them how you can evolve to be even better than just staying to yourself. How do you think we can implement that as all Blacks all over the world moving forward?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand. So because it was based on them having the vibranium, like them having the power to do that, and I don't know if we have collectively the resources to think like that.
Okay.
Right. But I think outside of like specifically having resources to share, I think there's a necessary point in there where we give each other the tools to improve as a unit amongst ourselves. And I think that's really necessary. And I think I truly believe that Coogler, being from the Bay, did this on purpose. At the end of the movie, when T'Challa was like, I bought that one, and I bought that one. And I think, to me, when I heard that, that was circulating our dollars amongst ourselves. And to me, as as a capitalist, I live in North America. I like money, whatever it is. But I think we need to. That part said it to me. What Coogler's takeaway was at the end of the day, moving forward, was to invest in ourselves and our communities. Um, and I mean, he's doing it, in a way that's. I mean, those boys that were playing basketball right there, their life has changed now. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that would have been that is how I see it moving forward if we were going to start something today going forward.
So yeah, I agree with that. I think so. Well, I agree with almost all of that.
Yeah. Feel free. Tear me up.
So no, it's not. I think it's just more of an expansion of really the same ideas. In order to, you're right in that. In order to sort of hold the Wakandan mindset, that there is a need in a way to first have access to, and then to understand the power that we do possess collectively. And I think in the film, evolution happened when T'Challa and Killmonger never really relented, but evolution happened when T'Challa began to understand who Killmonger was. Mm-hmm. That was the catalyst for change. And I think that collectively, we have to do the same thing. I think that it is up to us to get rid of the language, the separatist language. It is up to us to begin to make bridges and to connect with one another around the world, and to understand that, like, my perspective as a Black girl who grew up in Georgia, whose parents, whose great grandparents were slaves in this country, that my perspective is very much different from that of a Black person who, grew up elsewhere, but that we still are connected, and that understanding that connection, getting that perspective, respecting it, right? Being able to do the things that the Wakandans did, which was, I know there's, you and you and you and you and you, but we're all Wakandans, right? I know that there are all these tribes and we all have these different experiences, but we're all Wakandans. And when we work together collectively for our own good, our own protection, our own growth, our own economic stimulation, right? That is where we begin to see the power to really affect change. And so I think, and for me, that was the whole theme of the movie. It was getting to know the people across the sea, right? Getting to know your brothers and cousins and, third and fourth cousins all over the world and the places we show up, and learning who they are and figuring out ways to take our collective power and to move that into a place of, to stimulate our own thing, to stimulate our own. And I think that's the only way that we could ever get to a place where we could be like, the Wakandans of the world, because that collectively, as long as we remain divided in our thinking and divided in our approach and divided in the politic, on this kind of wholesale level, the longer we will fail to realize the collective power that we do have. And so I think that that's the beginning of it, is just looking at each other across the aisle and saying, hey, I see you, and let's connect, let's talk. And, let's get rid of all the demeaning language and the way that, Black people over here, y'all are like this, or I don't like, these people, right? Like that is, and we hear these things all the time. And that is, it's terrible, because those are the things that have caused us to be disenfranchised for so long.
Agreed.
I totally agree with both of you. And I think also, in terms of power, recognizing our power is key, because note that Black Americans have the biggest spending power. Anytime Black people collectively decide, actually, we're not going to buy from you, or actually, we're not going to do this, and the next you hear this person went bankrupt, or this, they're closing shop, or they're doing different things like that. And so I do think the vibranium might not necessarily be something tangible that is in like the cylinder or whatever sort of thing, or that seems as powerful. But I think we actually are more powerful than we admit to ourselves or give ourselves credit for. I think the bigger thing also is whether we're all on the same page of how we want to use that power at all times. Because sometimes it'll be a deal of, even though one portion is on set for a certain mission, and then there'll be like that one snitch or that one Uncle Tom or that one, like just something that like, no, actually, I'm going to take this for myself. Y'all can just, you know, figure yourselves out kind of thing. So I do think the understanding of what our power is and being on the same page of how we use it could be our secret vibranium without anybody else knowing. Secondly, the understanding of connection and community among Black people is also important, not only in terms of, oh, you're from here and you're from here, but even like colorism within the Black community. It should not be as big of a hiccup as it is still, right? Because non-Black people kind of see all of us the same, unfortunately, but we see each other like, no, actually, you have too many freckles, you're not really. And no, actually, you speak that way, so you're not really. And no, you didn't have to deal with drive-bys while going to kindergarten, so you didn't go through the struggle like I did, so you're not really Black. You know, this constant competition of, well, I have more scars than you, so you can't understand where I'm coming from. I think that is, maybe that's part of healing that within the community we need to get over, because that's not just us being hurtful, that's also an external influence, right? That's causing us to think that way among ourselves, which continues the division among ourselves, which is why sometimes we can't stay on the same page because of that division. That's clever that the outside tried to do that, but the colonizer's not going to win this time. We know, right?
Not today. Nope, not today.
Not today.
Not today.
And then also within the diaspora, I think in terms of power, Black people outside of America and outside of Africa look up to Black America as the answer or the example of how to deal with oppression. Even when you look at recently, I don't know if you've heard of this singer named Amara La Negra, who's been talking about the Afro-Latina issue. She herself is from Miami by way of, is it Dominican Republic or?
Yeah,
right? Okay. And she is Afro-Latina. She has this beautiful afro. And when you first see her, it's true, you kind of think like, oh, okay, Foxy Brown coming back. Like you wouldn't even know that she was Latina until she started talking or starting to speak Spanish, or even hear her music, because her music is primarily reggaeton. But she has noted that right now she's using her platform to talk about colorism and the Afro-Latina experience. And she's been speaking on how her and her colleagues primarily look up to the Black American experience, Black American social justice icons as the example and what to look up to of like, this is what Black excellence is, or this is how you deal with your oppressor, or this is how you can better yourself as a Black person when you're living in a place where you are being oppressed strategically. And I think that is another aspect of the Black American power that I don't fully recognize, in terms of that we have done a lot. And the track record is there that others can see like, yo, these people, like, vibranium is not something outside, vibranium's in us, okay? That is what I think we need to recognize as, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to preach here, but I feel like that's what we need to recognize as the Wakanda mindset of like, the power is within us. And it seems like a whole bunch of other people can see that, where one, either the Black diaspora sees that as like, oh my gosh, this is what we need to follow. The oppressors see that as, oh my gosh, we need to keep them divided because we won't be able to continue what we're doing if they knew how powerful they were. So I feel those are some things with the Wakanda mindset moving on, that, which is not, I mean, I don't think it's like breaking news. A lot of these things have been discussed throughout history, I think, among ourselves. But I think the recognition of our power and understanding that how important community is part of that.
Agreed. Very interesting.
All right. Well, this was so beautiful, you guys. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you. No, this was good. Gave me a chance to get some of these notes out.
dropping gems, mics, and umbrellas, like campaigns. Like, yes, this was great. So thank you all so much. Is there anything you guys want to share in terms of what you're working on, or where people want to find you, or anything like that you want to share?
Nothing for me. I like to stay anonymous.
Okay, that's fine. No worries. No worries. I wasn't sure if there were any questions or comments. I see we have been having some comments, though, from people who were watching. They were loving the conversation as well. Not sure if there are any questions. All right, for those who are watching, are there any questions you'd like us to address before we sign off? I don't want us to sit here for like 5 minutes just waiting, but. Well, then I think that's it, you guys.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for organizing this, and thank you for having me for sure. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Likewise. It's been a joy. It's a great way to start a Sunday morning. So thank you all. Wakanda forever.
Forever.
All right, guys. Bye. Signing off.
Bye.
Bye.